Leeds, Leeds, Leeds. What is happening? Welcome to Working Hours, an oral history podcast about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. Working Hours wants to record 1,000 loiners over the course of this, the most important decade in the history of the human species, and ask them about what they do all day and hear how they feel about it. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault. My mission here is to try to map out what my city, Leeds, a city that has declared a climate emergency, did during humanity's biggest emergency. On Working Hours, we hear how loiners have, are, and will be coping with our multiple and expanding crises during their day-to-day working hours. Can we turn things around? We'll find out. To tell this story, I need loiners like you, dear listener. I need people in Leeds or people from Leeds to come on this podcast and just tell me what they do all day and let me record how this affects us. Thank you for listening. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Wow. So I guess when I went through my teenage years, I bizarrely, because no one else in the family had this, but I got to find a love for golf through a friend of mine. Nobody had ever played. We weren't from that kind of background, but there was nobody in there. But a friend of mine and his father played at a local golf club in Halifax. So I started that when I was about 13, 14. Typical. I'd played football and all the rest of it, and then going up through school, I'd got this desire to either be a golfer or a fireman, bizarrely. But I was quickly pulled out of the fireman route because I'd had an injury on my right hand when I was in my early teenage years, and at the time you were told that that wasn't an option because I'd not got full use of that hand. Well, it was only one finger, to be fair. So I was very quickly through the careers kind of advice at the time told, thanks, but no thanks, you won't get anywhere. So then I was really sort of no idea after that. So I was always sporting and keen on football and basketball and golf and things. So I kind of got to a point where I wasn't the greatest in school. I was okay from education point of view, but I didn't particularly enjoy it. So I left as quickly as I possibly could when I was just turned 16, took my GCSEs and then pursued this kind of what proved to be a failed career in trying to make money as some kind of professional golfer in some capacity. So that was always the sort of dream. I'd done a bit kind of just helping out a bit at the local golf club. So I'd done a bit of bar work and caddied for the local professional or the guys who played a bit. But that was it. So I was probably never good enough, but it never stopped me.
I was going to say, it's like, was there quite a logical, fairly easy path, and was it about being good enough? Or I would imagine it's quite hard to get into, and you have to be within the circles.
Yeah, I mean, I guess starting to play a game like that's pretty simple. We weren't from a wealthy background, so it was second-hand gear, and off you go from there. And because there was nobody in the family interested, I was a bit kind of, my parents would always support me in whatever I did, but there was no natural follow your dad, follow your brother type thing. So I guess I kind of got into it. And when I kind of got to 16-year-old, I was born and raised in Halifax, so the number one choice of employer in Halifax is Halifax Building Society. So anybody who doesn't know what they wanted to do typically ended up going in that world, and I'd applied for that at the same time. So I'd left school at 16. I had no desire to do further education. University wasn't a family option. So I kind of got offered a job at the building society and got offered a job at a golf club in Elland at the other side of Halifax, and thought, which way do I go? And I thought, well, I'll follow the golf route and see how that goes. Probably knowing full well I wasn't, I was a long way off good enough, but I felt that, it was
You'll get better.
Yeah, exactly. You can improve, put time in, have a go type approach, really. So that was always the sort of childhood, boyhood dream, sort of growing up and kind of almost attempted to turn it into reality at 16. And then reality bit at 18 and quit and thought I'd better go get a proper job, so to speak. get employed, and of course reverted straight back to the plan B, which was reapply to join the building society. And they always had a big intake of people going in every year. It was still is a big employer in the town. So I went in March. I turned 18 in the February, and I think I started in the April time. So 2 years of golf, and then get a proper job, Nick.
You're listening to Series 5, Episode 20, and to my guest, Nick Smith. This is another Squadcast interview recorded on the 19th of April, 2024. Hello, listener. If you do listen regularly, haven't we had some cracking interviews so far this year? I mean, I still love each one I've ever done, but going for quantity earlier this year is bringing its own quality. Practice makes perfect, right? Can't remember if I've mentioned it, but I want to fill September with a recording on every workday. Please help. Please tell people about it. I will endeavour to get all September episodes out before year end. Please help with September. I really need to boost it. I need to get interviews, and I need to get people without websites and LinkedIn profiles, as well as loiners who have those things. Anywho, there's loads more cracking interviews coming up. You don't even know. There's only me and them, my guests obviously, that know about them at the minute. But soon it will just be us, because there's only us here. We're the only ones turning up here. And sometimes I don't turn up for a bit. But as long as I'm kicking and I've had a chance to record someone, I'll be back eventually. I owe it to them to put out their episodes. If you've recorded an episode I wasn't able to release, I'd still love to get those interviews out or to record new interviews with you. Okay, enough gabbing. Nick Smith is the Group Managing Director of Reward Finance Group. Nick leads Reward Finance Group, which is an SME lending business with 5 offices UK-wide and headquartered in Leeds. Reward Finance Group supports over 500 SMEs across the UK with over £225 million of funding and have been established for over 12 years. Reward Finance Group prides themselves on supporting their clients with their borrowing needs, providing tailored solutions that help businesses achieve their objectives. Reward Finance Group provides facilities from £50,000 to £5 million, and clients can borrow from 3 months to 3 years. Right, let's do this. Episode 130 of Working Hours with Nick Smith. So I'll jump straight into what are you doing now then?
So now I'm currently MD of a commercial lending business UK based, but with a head office based in Leeds, called Reward Finance Group. So we're a SME lending business, and I guess that my career's followed from those early days in the building society, soon to be a bank, right through. So I've worked in finance as a result of that ever since, really, and never done anything else. Different forms. Different types, be it kind of consumer or personal stuff, particularly at the Halifax, through now into what's now SME, small, medium-sized enterprise businesses. Like I say, on a national level, but we're Leeds head office with the majority of the team in there, and we were a Leeds formed business. So stuck in that financial circles for 30 years now.
No, it's terrible to say, isn't it?
I need to find something else to do.
Well, I mean, you obviously didn't stay at the Halifax. I mean, you obviously stayed for a while. How long did you stay?
I did. I mean, great employer and great grounding, because I stayed there 13 years, and I guess what that business gave you the opportunity to do was to move around and try different things and learn different skill sets. And I worked in a growing part of the organisation, so you got a chance to grow with the role a little bit, and you got a chance to get involved in lots of different things, and you were very well trained, and they invested well in the people. I mean, I guess for such a big employer, so there was lots of learning and development. But I got to sort of done 13 years, and it got to a point of it was one of those organisations where there was a lot of lifers in there, so you were there forever up until kind of pension age.
And you reach a just sort of level as well, and it was either more sideways moves or
Yeah. So you got to a point. This would be down. What year would I be in now? I'd be in 2000 and sort of 4, 5, 6. So pre-credit crunch, but aggressive part of building effectively what then was HBOS. So building a bank. And they started bringing guys in from outside. It was as simple as that. So I'd had a couple of issues through that 13-year period where my lack of education had caught up with me a bit. So I'd got so many rungs up the ladder, and then told, well, actually, you don't have any professional qualifications because you left school at 16. You're kind of stuck a bit. So I went off and did some distance learning with Open University in a bit of a I'll show you type of approach. Did that for whatever long that took, maybe a couple of years, come back, moved up a bit further. But then they were bringing guys in who were well educated, coming in from businesses outside. At this point, I was in the kind of middle management area. So it was quite evident that you were going to there was going to be a natural ceiling. I was going to get stuck along with a number of other people. So it was either accept that, as a 31-year-old
this
guy,
is where I am for however many years now, and
yeah, exactly, and it's a nice final salary pension scheme and all the rest of it. But I'm only 31, and that's a long way off. So go do something else, or stick at it really. And I guess I just saw that it was time to probably have a look. I'd kept an eye out in terms of what was involved in the local press, primarily what was being advertised in Yorkshire Post in the appointments section, vacancies section, which was quite, which it did every Saturday morning. I'll see what comes up. What can I do? What can I do differently? Having moved around various parts of the bank in terms of sort of personal banking, corporate, commercial, international trade, all sorts of stuff. So kind of a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. Really did a fair bit in trade finance. So I just kind of kept my options open really to see what appeared and whether I could find something to move on to.
Is that what moved you to Leeds then? Is that?
Basically. So I got. So the story goes that one must have been a Saturday morning. There's a job advertised for a local for a business development guy, so a new business guy based in Leeds, working for a business that's involved in lending money to small businesses. And it did two things. It was a trade finance business. It was Manchester head office, but had an office in Leeds. Satellite office, and effectively it had a couple of products, one of which I knew straight away, which was import finance, and then the other one was what's factoring and invoice discounting, which I knew a bit about but not much. And I walked in, got myself into an interview position, then got offered the job. I remember sitting in an interview and speaking with the hiring manager. It was only a small business, there were only 4 of us in Leeds at the time, 4 or 5 of us, kind of going, well, I can do that one, but I can't do that one, so I'll bring that one in pretty much straight away, and that one I'll learn as I go. They offered me the job, and I took that job. Started 2006. That would be 2006. Now, when I look back now, I think it was a massive leap of faith. Didn't feel it at the time. Didn't feel anything like it, but I'd worked.
Well, you or for them?
Well, probably both, to be fair. Probably both. But for me more than anything, I guess at this point, I've worked for massive organisations where you don't really have to worry about financial stability and that type of thing. And you've got a big brand above the door. Work just walks into you. You have a massive customer base.
Too big to fail.
Too big to fail, which ultimately proved to be wrong. But too big to fail. And I guess I kind of went into a world of a much smaller business, which I didn't really appreciate at the time, and then the risks that came with that around having to source all your own opportunities. Because I was on the sales team, there was only 3 of us in Leeds at the time on trade finance sales, and that came with, like I say, as I look back now, probably did have a lot of risks attached to it, but I didn't see them at the time. I guess the defining moment became pretty quickly when, of the 3 of us that were in there in our sort of product area, one guy left within 3 months, and the other guy, who was my hiring manager and my line manager, left within certainly within 12. So maybe probably 6 to 9. So I'm kind of in I'm in the business learning, thinking, wow, this is a bit more harder than I expected it to be. I wasn't well networked around Leeds. In fact, I was not networked at all. So I knew nobody out. I knew nothing outside of banking. And
Mm.
suddenly I'm in a completely different world. And then, like I said, they both left. So I'm now sat there. And at this point, my wife at the time was pregnant
Mm.
with the first child. And I'm now in, right, where do we go from here? Because I'm stuck. So
Mm.
there's still two or three of us in the office, but they're all doing different things. They're selling different products. So I am effectively one man band for my sort of side of the business. And off we go from there. So it was literally a sink or swim
Yeah.
situation. Kind of rolled my sleeves up and thought, right, it can't be that difficult. This business has been here a few years. Who have they dealt with in the past? Where have they won work? Who
Mm.
do I need to know? These two guys have just left. Neither of them had failed. They were both successful. So let's pinch all their contacts and
Mm.
build it up through there, really, which and proved. I mean, it was a bit hit and miss, but we proved successful for the next 4 years up to 2010.
Mm.
Um, and then the world blew up when all the banks effectively ran out of money, and
Mm.
and off we go from there. So yeah, but that was my first foray into the Leeds sort of finance market, 2006. But yeah, knew nobody, absolutely nobody, and kind of learned quickly,
Mm.
very quickly, and some of those contacts that helped me out right in those early stages still key business contacts now. Still
Yeah.
people that we deal with now, just obviously in a different business. So, but yeah, that's why I probably look back, followed by the fact that the business then ultimately ran out of cash because it was banked by Royal Bank of Scotland, so got imploded into all of that. So yeah, when I
Mm.
look back now, I think, wow, that was high risk. But at the time, he didn't feel it. He didn't feel it at all. He was just a young guy getting on with it.
Mm.
I'll sort it out myself type of thing because I'd come from a background of such security working for a big
Mm.
organisation that just never hit the radar that it would be hard and difficult and working on your own. Never came
Yeah.
across it.
Like there's the world before COVID and the world after COVID. There's the world before the credit crunch and after, and
Yeah,
especially in banking.
yeah.
Like I've done a couple of tours in financial firms, and like that expectation before the crash, it was like this will never end, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like the whole thing was
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
we've cracked it. This will never end.
Yeah.
This is all perfect. Like,
Yeah.
so did you get caught? Did you lose the job, or did you manage to stay
So,
working through?
no,
Or
yeah, no. What happened was we were a business that was heavily involved in. We did three things. We did property developments, effectively
mm.
funding house builders, which 2007, 8, 9 was absolutely flying because housing market was going mad. So we did that. That was the other guys in the office did that, but that became the main part of the business. We funded plant and machinery, so diggers, trucks, cars, that type of thing,
Mm.
asset finance, and then we had this trade finance business, which I was involved in, which was the smaller part, arguably the smaller part of the three. So what eventually happened was the property business got to such a size which was fine, and then obviously the market crashed. So
Mm.
overnight, the bank effectively stopped funding us. We had to try and work out what to do with clients and
Mm.
building plots in and around Leeds and Yorkshire that were half built, some not out of the ground, some without a roof on, and try and manage our way through that process, which everyone else was. In the end up, we did might have done 12 months, and then yeah, the business just folded, and that was it. Everybody, I left. I managed to secure another job before losing mine, but it would have ended up with that. But you could see the writing on the wall, so I was
Mm.
keen to try and move out and do something wherever possible, sort of in that space. This would be 2000 and maybe 10,
Mm.
90, yeah, maybe 10. But this is bang in the middle of the credit crunch. So, financial services credit crunch. It's an awkward time to be in a lending business. But yeah, luckily I managed to get out before it was P45 time.
Mm. So, how did you end up in Reward? Were you already in Reward at that point then, or?
No, no. So then I've gone. So then I've got two further roles since then. So 2010, 11. left that business, joined one of the startup challenger banks at the time that was just effectively coming up through post credit crunch. At this point, we're starting to come out. So a couple of new banks had set up.
Which one?
I joined Aldermore. So the other ones, it was Metro and Aldermore primarily at that time. So I joined Aldermore on the invoice finance side, based out of Cleckheaton in West Yorkshire. They had an existing commercial lending business that the bank had bolted on, so they bought it. What was the business called? Cattle's Invoice Finance. They'd had some financial difficulties as well, but this all morphs into effectively Aldermore as the challenger bank. So I went in there working across the UK, effectively supporting the MD, helping him because there was a big period of change. So I was helping him out, particularly on the new business and sales side. There were 6 regional officers from Glasgow down, and my role for a couple of years was to support him with integration and funding, and just basically act as the MD's right hand man to just try and help move the business on as much as possible whilst he was doing stuff at board level and that type of thing. So I did that for a couple of years. Big changes in that organisation at the time, big change of personnel, primarily mostly voluntarily, because the business had moved from being an independent finance company through to being part of a bank, albeit only a small bank, but a lot of people didn't want to go through that change. So that brought several opportunities for different roles, one of which effectively became looking after the Yorkshire office of what was Aldermore's invoice finance business at that time. So effectively MD of the regional office at this point, still based in Cleckheaton, looking after 250 SMEs, primarily all Yorkshire based, with invoice finance requirements. We'd have a team of maybe 30, 35 people. So leading that division or leading that office for the sort of challenger bank, did that for a couple of years. And then, it was a great job, learned a lot, hard because the bank was private equity owned. So it was really keen to try and drive to profitability. The job became not just Leeds or not just West Yorkshire or the Yorkshire office. Manchester came into the mix, Scotland came into the mix. So suddenly I'm running the North, which was fine, but very aggressive. And I guess I gradually just got to a stage of going, I've done everything I can here. It's not for me. Where they were wanting to, I guess not where they wanted to take it, but more what they were trying to impose from the centre wasn't really with where my values were or what I wanted to do.
It was like, you've just focused on this goal and you're not adapting to the reality on the ground.
Yeah, and whatever you did was never good enough, and they didn't really ever understand that division of the bank. Every other part of the bank was going great guns. This was a niche, specialist kind of area. Whatever growth we'd deliver, and we were hugely profitable. It was a good business, great people. Didn't looked after our clients well, but it was never enough, and that becomes a point where you go, well, actually, you have a great year. I always remember us having a really strong year where we delivered something like 15% year-on-year growth in a flat market. Really good performance, and almost kind of been told, well, that's not good enough. We need to do more. And you get to a point where you just go, you guys you're too far removed from what's going on, and you're never going to get there. And it's just a constant, I won't say beating up, but you could never achieve what their aspirations.
It's like you can never make them happy, sort of thing. It's like,
you've
got to be happy sometimes that we've hit some of these targets, and then put it up.
Yeah, and there was a lot of, it wasn't just me. There was quite a bit of attrition across the sort of team in that. It was, and I get why it was a bank that was trying to find its feet and grow, and it's turned out to be a big organisation and do some great stuff, and it did back then, but it was just like, I think, I guess, reasonably senior in that position, you just run your race. You get to a point where I've done my bit. Some of the guys,
and it's also you've got all that wealth and experience now, like all those years of experience, all these different products that you've done, and it's like, I know the level that I can run at, and it's not like I'm not trying hard enough. I'm not like a young whippersnapper that you need to motivate. Also, I know my market value. And I could work somewhere else for less hassle and potentially more money.
Yeah, and I also think, sometimes just a thank you's fine, or just
Yeah.
we're doing good
Yeah.
basics, and a lot of that was culturally not quite there, and it was there from within our team,
Mm.
but not coming down on us a bit. So I gradually, I'm talking. This has not happened overnight. This has gone
Yeah,
on
yeah,
and on,
yeah. Over a
over
period of time, yeah.
young family, some challenges on the home front, the whole thing, and you just sort of go, right, like, it's time for a change of scenery. This is not going to work out over the short or medium term.
Yeah.
Go do something else, which was good.
And you wanna celebrate your successes. It's like,
Yeah,
I've been hitting my targets or exceeding my targets
yeah.
here. I'd like some appreciation for that, please.
Yeah, exactly. And that didn't feel like that was overly there. So
Yeah.
it was time, it was time to go do something else. And there were loads of other factors involved as there
Mm,
are at the time. But it was a good business. We had a great time, learnt a lot. But yeah, I think kind of going, I've run my race here. It's time
yeah,
to go
yeah.
do something. It was probably about right, and everybody left amicably. And there was no drama, don't get me wrong. It wasn't
No.
no fault or anything. It was just I'd got to the point where it was time to go do something
Mm,
else. I then did. So I'm sort of staying in this sort of independent sort of sector. So went to be national sales director of a business that again was still in the invoice finance world, doing still SME lending, but based in Bristol.
mhm,
Not really much geographical presence outside of the south, so the job was pretty much put it on a national level, really. So get some traction in Manchester, in Leeds. If we can get into Scotland, do it. Let's get going a bit more in Birmingham, although Birmingham was doing quite well because it was satellite of Bristol. So, but really go in, and again a pretty aggressive growth strategy. Again, at this point, private equity owned. Can we grow this business?
mm,
And one of the strategies was national distribution. So I kind of worked because I was, the kind of I could easily get a Yorkshire office opened because by this point I've got 10 years worth of contacts, and I can bring people in from the previous business because there were a few disgruntled staff. So it was a bit of a pinch a few people, put them in an office in central Leeds, and see how we get on.
mm,
And do the same sort of similar job in Manchester and the rest. So I was kind of group sales director looking after 3 or 4 different product lines, but primarily it was a people-led job of try and just get the thing open really away from its Bristol head office. So that worked well. Enjoyed that. Loved it. No dramas at all. A good business, still a good business to this day. Great people in there. But then the reward opportunity came along, and that was at this point. I was a lot of travelling with the previous job, a lot of
mm,
time in Bristol and the south. And by this point, I'd got divorced, was just getting remarried. Second wife was pregnant, didn't really want to be kind of traveling a lot. I would have done, I mean, it'd have been fine, but wanted to probably be a little bit more home based. But then the guys who set up Reward, I'd known both of them for a long time. I'd previously
mm,
worked with one of them before, and we had a conversation, and I think on race number 5 at Doncaster St Leger Ladies' Day in 2015, I think it was, sort of,
mhm,
I'll come and join you, I'll be your succession plan, da 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 da. But which was a bit of banter chat more than anything, but then
mm,
turned into a bit more reality over the 12-month period, and joined in 2016. And still here now, virtually 8 years almost to the day. I think it was early June, so probably 6 7 weeks off, but
mm,
almost eight years to the day. And then at that point, Reward was a much smaller business, 10 or 15 employees,
mm,
Leeds based. Great team, great people. Now there's 75 of us across 5 offices UK wide. So same people, original founding directors. One still involved, one retired literally a week ago, so they've been involved all the way through. So yeah. So so I've been in Leeds this morning. Still find myself in and around the city, and out and about in the wider sort of Yorkshire market. It's a national role, but I probably spend. One of the challenges for us is we're quite a northern heavy business, so majority
mhm,
of our clients are Leeds or Manchester or Yorkshire or Lancashire,
mhm,
kind of everything across the north really. And one of our challenges is to grow away from that, but
mm,
um, a lot of my time is spent primarily Leeds or working from home or travelling across to Manchester a bit.
mm. Yeah. Can't avoid going to Manchester, can you? If you you gotta, because it's so huge.
No, and you're right. You're right, and that's probably where we've a bit more to do to grow that market because it's massive. And I always think as a city, it just feels a bit further forward than Leeds is from an infrastructure point of view.
Mm,
I think Leeds is catching up. There's a lot of investment going in, which is great
mm,
to see. Manchester just feels a little bit more like they've probably done that a few years
mm.
before we did. Still always rains. I mean, it staggers me how often it rains. I mean, it's absolutely. I tend to get on the train in Huddersfield and go across. It's nothing of a journey, but the amount of times I forget to take an umbrella when I walk out of Victoria. I know it's an old kind of cliche about always rains in Manchester, but it's true.
Yeah,
Really,
a lot. But it rains a lot here as well. I
it
lived in
does.
Amsterdam for a couple of years, and they would always say, "Oh, it always rains in England, doesn't it? It's always raining." It's like it rains all the time here in Amsterdam. Like November, it just rains,
Yeah,
like, and it rains there. You know, like
yeah,
yeah. People are kind of blind to this sort of thing. I'm like, oh, our weather's fine.
yeah,
You moan about your weather all the time.
yeah. And I think
Um,
As Brits, we're weather mad anyway, aren't we? To be fair, I don't know why, but we just are. I think it's ingrained. It's cultural.
because it's so variable. Because you can have three,
Mm.
well, you can have all the
Oh,
seasons in one day, can't you? So,
yeah, yeah. My brother spent a bit of time living in, I won't say southern France, but probably about 2/3 of the way down. He did about 6 or 7 years down there. They
mm,
always used to say the seasons are so defined.
yeah.
In winter it snows, in summer it's shorts and t-shirt every day, and spring and
Mm.
autumn is exactly what they're meant to be. You know exactly what you're dealing with, and obviously we just don't have that luxury at all, do we?
No, well, I mean, it's been rainy today. The sun's out now, and it could be
Yeah,
snowing
same
in
here.
5 minutes.
Nice in the car yesterday. It's end of April.
Yeah, I mean, it's been hailing in the last couple of days as well. So, okay, so I want to just do a little bit, talk a bit of shop.
Yeah,
I'm curious. So, from my understanding and what I've read, after the credit crunch, there was like banks have kind of receded, like the
yeah,
main sort of big banks have kind of receded from a lot of the business financing and so on.
yeah.
I mean, is that true? And is that an area that you've kind of gone into and you're taking up the slack for, or am I
Yeah, I
reading that
think
wrong?
no, you're not reading that wrong. That's true. I think the banks for lots of reasons, some being regulatory to be fair, did pull out of that SME marketplace back at post credit crunch. Um, they've not really got back involved. I mean, they might
Mm.
dispute that, and I'm certainly not here to start bank bashing as people have done
No,
in the
and most of them offers business banking and so
right.
on, but like it very much seems to me, and considering I have started a business in this decade, for
Yeah,
however good I am at that or not, but I don't think that we're in a place where it's like, you take your business plan to a bank and you get the
no,
funding and get the loan and so on. We're kind of like find angel investment, find anything that you can get. And if you can put together a good package to get credit, then do that.
yeah. I think we are exactly that, and that's what's happened in the market. So you only have to look at alternative lenders that are out there, whether it's people who advertise on the TV. There are hundreds of alternative finance companies providing business banking type services, loan facilities across, and some of them are regional, some of them are national. But
Mm,
that this whole the market dynamics completely changed. I mean, you go back to pre credit crunch, you were pretty much big four banks,
mm,
of which HBOS or Halifax's strategy was to be one of those. And now there's still the big four banks, but
mm,
they're interested in corporate lending, bigger transactional PLC investment
mm,
banking type stuff. You're right. Walking into a branch of a bank with a business plan and that's just not there, and that's what that you'll have to look at the closure of bank branches. You'll have to look at the fact
mm,
that there's no branch managers in any of these. Nobody can make a decision.
mm,
Everything's done on the telephone. Is what's happened over the years as they've retracted from that sector, and the alternative finance market, including us at Reward and lots of other great businesses, have stepped in to support that. Whether you're like we're typically doing asset backed stuff, so we're generally doing facilities, a bit like an overdraft facility, but you give us some security, so we're a secured lender, so we to be able to take property in the main, albeit we've got some other strings as well. So we're kind of one side of it, but there's plenty of guys out there who are doing merchant cash advance for retailers, so they advance your money based on the amount of sales you've got going through your card terminal. There's lots of people doing, kind of smaller unsecured loans. So that's more like I've got a business plan. Will you help me? I want 20 grand to get going. There's lots of that. And there's just literally a massive alternative finance market that's grown up in the last 10 years and continues now. And people, fintechs and all the rest of it. I mean, it doesn't matter what, call it whatever you want. Some are technology driven, some are not. But the reality is the alternative finance space is a big space. And one of the the British Business Bank, which is a government led bank, kind of development bank, they announced some market statistics for last year, suggesting that for the first time ever in SME lending, the alternative finance market had lent more than the high street banks had to the SME in the UK. So if you're an SME, I think it was something like, I'll get the number wrong, but it was something like 58-60% of all lending was coming out of these alternative finance providers. But majority of them start with the bank and they get nowhere because 4 out of 10 or 6 out of 10 rather get rejected. So, and probably more. So it's very difficult if you want to start up a new business. You are into angel investment. There's a government initiative called Startup Loans Company. They do some stuff, but you are into trying to find a way of finding money. Whereas,
or bank of mum and dad, or
mum and dad. 20 years ago, you'd have walked straight on the high street of your local town. There'd have been 6 or 7 different banks there, and you go in and the bank manager.
You wouldn't have started a business without talking to a bank.
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't.
You just wouldn't. The first point of call would have been to go to a bank and look at your options, start discussing it from there. And and now you just go online, 12 quid, and you're like, I'm a business.
Yeah, you do. Exactly what you do. And back then you'd have gone in and the manager would have made the decision there and then whether you could have whatever you required, and sometimes you'd put collateral up and sometimes you wouldn't, and that's it. And there was a lot of loyalty and trust, and none of that exists now. And that's not necessarily all the bank's fault. Like I say, some of it's regulation, that type of stuff. But the market over the last 20 years in financial services, particularly for SMEs, is unrecognisable to what it was turn of the century.
It's the non-balance sheet part, though, isn't it? That's the problem. It's because on paper it just makes money, but the thing that makes money is you doing the bespoke work, the specialist work, the adjudication, and the kind of like the judgment of like, this is feasible, this is not feasible.
Yeah,
you have the cash for this. You don't have the cash for this. I can give you the cash for this, and you will be able to pay it back. I can see this way, and so on.
And I guess that's the skill that's not really taught anymore, or certainly not at that level around. We are old school. We meet every client. We understand what's going on with every business, because actually in the smaller end of the market, SME, however it's currently defined, but let's say sub 20 million turnover, it's all about people. Majority of it is, am I lending money to that director or that family or that series of directors? Do I trust them? Am I going to pay it back? Does it make sense? Do the numbers work? It's all about, but the first part is about the people opposite you. So can you get in your car or jump on a train, or certainly get to meet your prospects as early in the process is something we still do now, and something that I've always done because that's how I was taught to do it. But you're right, now it's not that. It's go online, buy a company, 12 quid, get inundated by lots of direct marketing about, do you want a bank account, do you want this, do you want the other, and you're off and running. And then people go, right, brilliant, now I'll go find some money, and all of a sudden that's extremely difficult. That's hard, really hard. There's just not really anywhere to, particularly startup stuff. And I think a lot of it's, there are homes for these places and there is money out there to support, but finding it's very difficult because everybody still goes to the bank, and there was a process around how the banks deal with declines that was set up that the government were involved in about 10 years ago. That's not really worked.
Mm.
There's a big network of commercial finance brokers that works like a dream.
Mm.
That's a lot of guys who are ex-finance guys, ex-bank guys, or girls and ladies who've come and set up on their own as small businesses, helping SMEs find funding and deal with costs and providers and services and the accountants and that type of thing. So there's a whole network of that set up, particularly around Leeds and West Yorkshire, where there's some great advisors in there, and that's where businesses need to go there. Don't go to the high street. It's just not worth it. You're wasting your time, money, and it just takes too long. So, but it's not well publicised enough. That's the problem.
Yeah,
So
and it's a minefield, isn't it? It's like it's one of those areas. I mean, even before you needed like a prescribing service of, okay, you're doing this, you need to go down there, turn left here, go see them, see that. So yeah,
yeah,
it gets difficult.
it
Yeah,
does. It
I mean
does.
as well. I'm
I mean,
thinking that. Go on, sorry.
no, carry on. Carry on.
I was just going to say, I'm thinking that there's a quality control element as well, like the way that it was done before with the banks of like taking it to someone where they can kind of test the viability before any money's kind of given across. But the fact that you can just start any company anyway, and then you might not have the advice, you might not know or be bothered doing the research about laws and so on. Before you had someone who knows the market, knows the
Yeah,
regulation, who can say, no, don't do that and don't do that. But now, maybe it helps people just because people try all sorts of desperate things online and so on that you kind
yeah,
of like, do you know that's potentially illegal or whatever? Are you just doing anything for money or is it a con or are you just desperate? Do you know what I mean by that? That I think there was an
yeah.
element of quality control and education and support through that kind of a thing.
Yeah, and I guess there's positives and negatives to that. And
Mm,
the positive is you get that somebody who's got some experience and you can sense check things away from. I guess the negative is why should an old school bank manager control what you do as a business owner and the rest of it?
yeah,
they're not the the holder of every good idea in on the planet, are they? So I guess
yeah.
there's pros and cons around that. I think it's access to finance is one thing, access to advice is something completely different, and I guess
Mm,
that's the bit, isn't it, where you've got to go. Well, actually, I guess you still business owners still need that advice
mm,
capacity. It's just where do you get it from? But
mm,
you're talking now internet, AI, all that type of stuff. I mean, there's plenty of places to go. You've just got to do a bit of soul searching yourself, really, rather
mm,
than, than one sort of single point, really.
mm,
I think it's
mm,
better. I think now there's more choice. There's definitely more
mm.
choice. I think that means that there's a better market better finance market to support entrepreneurs and business owners and that type of thing. I just think that it's just so vast. It must be daunting to work out where to start. And
Yeah,
that's the problem.
and I get the impression that because when I think of anything grind culture or business culture, it is very much go and do it, go and find it yourself. I don't know where I'm going with this. I had a point and now I've lost my point. Um, what was I trying to say? I agree that it's better to have the sort of freedom, but I think we have an unreal. This is what I'm trying to say. We have an unrealistic view of it. The perception is very different from the reality of what. Like the reality is quite hard of like finding various people that know your area and your market and talking to real people in real business, because so much of it
Yeah.
is kind of online. How much are you getting from an online guru that you can, that, I think there's more value in speaking to someone that's local,
Oh,
that's
definitely.
based here, that knows the business, knows the market, knows sectors, like
Yeah.
someone that's done it and not just someone that's saying that they've done things online.
No, I think you're right because the legal framework's a nightmare. your company law, all that employment law, all that type of stuff, tax matters, all that stuff is extremely difficult
Mm-hmm.
to navigate unless you've got the experts in the room to do that. And I also think as well, reality check, I think
Yeah.
sort of some of the social media stuff, I think it's dead easy, and actually reality.
It's too much values and stuff, and it's like a business is a balance sheet. It's
Correct.
it's
Yeah.
numbers on a piece of paper,
Yeah.
Oh, that's red tape. No, that's the business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's getting that. It's far harder or far more difficult than people realise to go from a concept or an idea to
Mm-hmm.
reality that turns into pound notes for your
Mm-hmm.
weekend out or whatever. That's far more difficult than you think, and every step in between requires a lot of hard yards to get there, and failures and ups and downs and all over the place. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess that's the bit that probably that's certainly the bit where the advisors, do a great job in terms of just trying to help people navigate through that area, because it is difficult. It's very difficult. I mean, you have to look at how many businesses fail, don't you? Where it's and it's awkward. So I think there's definitely a role for there's a huge advisor market, and they've all got specialisms and niches and the rest of it. But it's all valid if you're trying to set up a business or grow a business or move on and go from there.
Yeah. So with the offer for reward, are you, could someone walk in off the street and then start getting kind of bespoke advice and so on? Do they need to bring something to you? Is there a point in time where they would come to you? Are you looking at businesses that are 3 years and older that are past that kind of risky period? Or?
No. I mean, majority, 99% of all our opportunities coming from that commercial broker network or a advisor network. So we tend to not deal direct with the SME in terms of introduction. So not many people come to us off the high street. Many people come to us they've come from an advisor who's basically said, you want to talk to the guys at Reward because this is the best fit for what you're trying to do, and off you go from there. But no, we are all sector. We're not bothered whether you started yesterday or you've been going 100 years. We don't look at that type of thing. We are a asset secured business, so we need some security. That's just where we sit in the lending world, which is typically, like I said, sort of property or that type of thing. So, but we're looking at what's the security. We want to understand the client, what they're doing, how can they pay interest, that type of thing. And we're a short-term funder, so we're typically average clients with us a couple of years. So we're looking at then how do they get the money in the main? How do we get the money back? How do they, so we become a bit of a stepping stone really for businesses that are growing on their way up to the sort of prime market or to the banking market, or businesses that need a bit of credit repair. Need a much more supportive lender who can help them overcome a hurdle before they go again effectively. But we see everything in between. We have some of our clients that are great clients and should be with the banks all day long, but they won't because the service isn't there or the speed isn't there. So we have that, and then we have some clients that are struggling and we're trying to help them through and the rest of it. But we're happy to talk to anybody. We're quick to say yes and quick to say no, which I think is key, because there are so many options for people. If that advisor puts you in front of 2 or 3 people, you want to know where you're going next. Don't spend 6 weeks telling me you're going to think about it, which is unfortunately what happens in my world. That's quite common. Tell me straight away whether you think it's got legs or not, and even better, if you can give me a yes or a no within a matter of days, then that's fine. And that's how we're set up to deal with that. To be fair, a fair bit of the market is as well. That react quickly, make a decision quickly, stand by that decision, and execute what you've said you're going to do, because this is people's businesses at the end of the day. It's their lives. There's no point spending 10 weeks to tell you I'm not going to do it, because you could have spent that 10 weeks talking to someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to jump us into questions because I'm conscious of the time, so I want to whip us along a little bit. So I'm going to kick us off with COVID. So this question, what I want to look at, so I'm looking at 2 things particularly. First of all, as we went into lockdown, how did that affect your workload? Was it a massive increase? Did it drop off the cliff? Did it not change? And then coming out of COVID, what are the things that actually that you've noticed that have changed for you? You know, like what did it change permanently?
Okay. So I guess going into COVID, didn't really change our work patterns in terms of volume or anything. So it didn't make us really busy or really quiet. It made us, I guess, embrace technology extremely quickly as a business because we've had to shut all offices. So we had to move instantly into how do we communicate with ourselves and with our clients when we were a very office-based business. So every day the offices would be full. So we quickly had to very move across over onto Zoom or Teams and that type of thing, which was
Mhm.
untested for us at the time. We'd not done any of that, so we had to quickly embrace that, which worked well. And a bit similar with clients, really. We were used to visiting clients, but of course, we were funding at the time maybe 200 businesses, 250. So we were trying to work out how do we try and I won't say keep these guys afloat, but some of our clients' turnover literally just stopped overnight. So it was like, right,
Yeah, yeah,
how
how,
do you manage that?
yeah. How did you manage it?
So this is before before the furlough schemes and all the rest of it. So
Yeah,
we kind of just tried to support where we could with clients and accept that actually we'd let we'd continue to fund where we had enough security to do it or where they had availability. So we almost took it pretty much day by day because
yeah,
we got our own cash to sort out and clients' cash. So we're trying to kind of manage it. Now, a lot of them, some business just mothballed straight away, and that was that. So they got no
mm,
income, but then they got no costs, and of course they pushed all that down. And we'd put clients on payment plans, or we'd stop charging interest for 2 or 3 months. So we did lots of different things, but we took it on a client by client basis because it was the only way of doing it. Some had other income, so we would literally try and work our way through on a pretty much daily conference
yeah.
call.
So was it? Yeah, all right. So you were kind of chatting to everyone at once because otherwise
Yeah,
it'd be like ringing in every single client all the time of
yeah,
like, this has changed, this has changed.
yeah.
What's yeah?
No, so we kind of took more of a, I guess it was a reactive approach, but clients knew full well where we
You
were,
could
so we
only
didn't.
be reactive.
Yeah, we didn't shut down. We didn't do anything. We didn't furlough any staff. We kept the full
Mm,
team on, and we just effectively made sure we were there. So if a client would ring us up and say I can't pay the interest for a month, we'd kind of look at that individual scenario. Yes, it's fine. We'll just add it on. We'll deal with it next month. It was very much that type of
mm,
arrangement until the government got some of the schemes running and they were
mhm,
furloughed and the rest of it. And we were honest with people. I guess we communicated with them as strongly as we could, and we just tried to develop solutions for each client as it went because everything was different. Because
mhm,
we'd have, and that's our clients are spread across massive sectors. So we'd have hospitality, local pubs and stuff. Well, they were basically shut down overnight, weren't they? And then they'd all
mhm,
start doing a bit of food and off you go. But then suddenly we had that help out to eat out, so they went
mhm,
really busy, and so we just had to just deal with whatever was coming down the line from government and on the TV and different schemes at the same time. Some of it would be, property businesses with tenants in who couldn't pay rent, and
mhm,
you just had to try and do what you felt was right for that client at the time.
mm,
Um, and in the end, over that sort of as things unlocked and locked back down, it worked out fine. We moved communication internally into Teams and Zoom. We generally
mm,
caught up with the guys every day. Some were really busy, some would have nothing to do, but that was that. We took a view really early that we were in a sound financial position. We wouldn't furlough anybody, and we
mhm,
definitely had people who were probably doing an hour a day, and we could have furloughed, but that didn't feel the right thing to do at all.
mhm,
We value ourselves on being a good employer and a fair employer, so there was no need, there was no benefit to us. It was just heartache on certain members of the team, so we furloughed nobody.
mhm,
We did what we could with the clients. We supported. We never stopped, so we never. A lot of the lending businesses closed the doors and just went, right, we're not lending any more money. We didn't
mm,
do that. We just kept going. We
mhm.
decided that we'll keep going as best we can. We didn't get involved in any of the government-backed lending schemes because they just felt extremely complicated.
Yeah,
Lots of
wise to
yeah,
avoid that.
And we didn't, the way we source our own funds from our shareholders and stuff, we didn't need it. So it was
Mm-hmm.
like we had a couple of conversations on it and thought this just looks far too much like hard work. So we didn't do that. So we just stuck to what we've sort of done and kept honest with people, and kept funding businesses and kept the team on through the process really. I guess it was a we were busy, but we were busy standing still, if that makes sense. So
Mm. I
we
mean,
were
did your
supposed.
hours stretch? I mean, once you sort of like had to work from home, was there a lot of, because it seems like
No,
you were able to kind of manage it within the normal
yeah,
working hours once. Yeah.
I think we probably became more. The working day probably stretched, but not the amount within it. So I suppose you were
Mm.
probably a bit more responsive to when something went wrong. But I don't particularly remember thinking that it were 12-hour days or anything like that. The challenge was, if anything, particularly for me personally, and a number of us across the team, was trying to manage the kids.
Mm.
So we'd be on, we'd be on Zoom calls, and she's now 8, but she'd been 4 or 5 at the time. She'd been on every call. I'd be sat talking to you, and then she'd just appear next to you and chatting, and so that was always. And homeschooling was very difficult, but that
Mm.
was the main sort of things really. That work wise was we sort of managed because we kept everybody up to speed and tried to work as we could. Culturally, we did what everyone else did. We had quizzes and all sorts of
Mm.
stuff on Zoom and stuff. But we managed okay through it. We'd be far more prepared now than we were then. Should it
Mm.
happen again? We've put a lot more systems in place. At the time we were working in because we were office based, so
Mm.
pre-COVID everything was paper, so we
Mm.
instantly had to switch to cloud and electronic stuff overnight. We'd never probably have, that'd have taken us ages if we'd have done it in a normal environment, but of course we
Mm.
got no choice. So
Mm.
so a lot of things, so it forced us to do a lot of things then. So we'd be far more better equipped now than I guess like most businesses would than they would back then. But
Mm.
the key decisions for me really that proved to be right were keep lending to clients,
Mm.
help them out and support them where they need it. Don't take an aggressive stance, which we don't anyway, and
Mm.
keep all the team on. And that they,
Yeah.
they at the time, you sort of think, is that the right thing to do? Situation was changing rapidly, wasn't it? But when I look
Yeah.
back now, that was absolutely the right thing to do.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to call it because you had no idea,
No,
and again, like with the credit crunch, it was one of those things. It was like, sort of slow motion car crash. It's like, yeah, it was a big shock, but also we seen it coming, like it's like a wave coming towards us, and we're just sort of like, that's not going to hit us. It's not going
yeah,
to hit us. Oh, it's hitting us.
yeah. It was weird, wasn't it? Because think about that January, February time before lockdown, and the first case in York,
It's
I
just
think
all
it
in the
was.
background noise. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
should have seen it coming. I mean, we saw it coming. It's just
Yeah, well,
bizarre.
that's it. We watched it, and
Yeah,
then was like, nah,
yeah,
it's
ignored it.
happening.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
coming out, I guess coming out a bit more. We've never had to do.
Have you gone hybrid? I assume what are you like 2 days in,
Kind of,
2 days off, or
we've kind of let it find its own feet. Really, we've not
so
actually do
as
anything.
people prefer?
Yeah, and in the main, I think a lot of certainly the younger end team want to get back into the offices, so they were quite happy to
Yeah,
go into Leeds, Manchester, Birmingham, etc. Because the board of being at home.
yeah, and sick
Um,
of looking at computer screens on their
yeah,
own.
yeah. So a fair bit of that. We'd got some people who still live with parents, and then they were working from home, so there was a bit of that going on. And we'd done a bit of stuff to get people out. So I remember us doing a walking competition where we said each office would walk the boundary of its county.
Mm,
So you got everybody out in the morning, and they all had a pedometer thing, or whenever they went, and they do an hour a day, come back, everyone would record the steps. So that got
mm,
momentum going and stuff through. But no, we're not. When we come out, we don't really have. I guess it drip fed in a bit, but we've never had to force a hybrid or
mm,
you must go in X day and all the rest of it. Majority of it, 90% of it, has been people willing to just come back in. And as they go, and some roles are desk based roles naturally.
mm,
Some of our team are desk based anyway, so they've been fine. But we've not really had any issue with people coming in or not coming in, not at all. I don't recall. Certainly when you see stuff in the press about them having to some of the forcing people to go into central
mm,
London and all the rest of it, we have none of that,
mm,
none of that at all. Which I think is a testament to probably the culture of the organisation and the team that we've built. Really, that they're quite happy to, they know they know what needs to be done to help the client out, which is basically what we're here for. We're a service provider to our clients, and they realise that some of the job needs to be in. I suspect the average person's probably doing 3 or 4 in, 1 out. I suspect. I mean, I don't. We don't track it, so as you can tell, I can't give you a number because it isn't a problem. I don't need to. It's not something we need to monitor as a business because it just doesn't ever crop up at all. So we've been hybrid. And the busy wise, I guess, yeah. I mean, we probably took a few months to get going, like most businesses did. Since then, though, we've seen massive growth since then, and I guess that's down again mainly to that burst into that sort of growth in that alternative finance space. So we entered. I mean, a lot of our measures are around how much money we lend into the market. And coming out of COVID, where we sort of were stagnant for probably about 12 months, we had about 75 million lent into SMEs across the UK, majority of which been in sort of Leeds and Yorkshire. That number's now up at 260. So it's taken us. So we've grown the business threefold inside 3 years. So I think that just shows you the growth that the pent up demand that's in there, that businesses want to borrow money, providing it's the right solution. So we've been busy ever since. And that continues to this day. But I don't think so. COVID definitely had an impact on us. I'm quite proud of how we dealt with it, if I'm honest. I mean, it was CT Man's job at the time because obviously nobody had a clue what was going on. But I think in the main, I think the business made a lot of the right calls at the time. I'm sure I made some wrong ones, and I'm probably just remembering the good ones. But
print the legend.
Yeah, but I don't kind of nothing springs to mind. I think we should have done that differently or that differently. I think in the main we probably made the right call for what was going on at the time. But interesting time. Interesting. And some businesses are still struggling with it now, and that's quite sad, really. That the world's moved on a little bit, but some of the businesses that were borrowing money from the government under the different schemes that they had, particularly the one where you got £50,000 for each one, and that still wants repaying now. And some of the banks, the way they manage that's quite awkward. And so whilst a lot of things moved on, it's still there. It's still sat there.
It's loads of it's a huge fraud as well, isn't it? Of there's loads
completely.
of fake businesses that didn't exist, and
yeah. And I guess that just comes down to government not really putting the controls in place. But then, what do you do? I mean, I don't want to go into politics, but you only have to look at all this PPE stuff that goes on about we bought all this stuff and it's not right. But then at the time, you just bought whatever you could get their hands on, didn't they? I mean,
that's the thing with urgency as well. Like, just do it, just do something. And it's like, well, I did the wrong thing because I didn't have time to think. But I'm not going to give them too much benefit of the doubt.
No, I mean, the press just pick up on the negative, don't they? Enough, because if they. At the time, there was no PPE and people in hospital and all the rest of it. So, you're bound to make some mistakes and that. But now there looks to be a big witch hunt afterwards on that type of stuff. But, I think that's one thing in our world, in financial services or anything to do with that perceived professional services piece. The big change has been the technology piece, this type of stuff, which would never have happened before. We do board meetings on it, all that type of thing. We've never done any of that, and that applies for accountants and lawyers and that whole so-called professional services sector that's embraced technology overnight because it had to. And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, no. I mean, there are loads of benefits from it. And, again, it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? There's lots of terrible things about having to do so many online Zoom meetings and stuff as well. But there's so much convenience to it as well. And people have, like, initially, I don't know if you'll recognize this, but initially the sort of first meetings online and stuff, it's like we had to start, we didn't really have the etiquette and the ways of doing things, and those things have sort of come into place now.
Yeah, and I think as a whole, I mean, it's very sector driven, this, and I might be being a bit of a sweeping statement, but UK business has dealt now with, if you go back long enough, the credit crunch. We obviously weren't about back then as a business, but we came out of that side of it. But if you think, in the last 15 years, credit crunch, Brexit, COVID, Liz Truss's mini budget, at the time they're all, oh my god, but actually, far more robust now than business has ever been because they've managed to ride out a lot of that thing. Yeah, I know there are some horror stories in there, but in the main, even going back now to rising inflation and rising interest rates, in the main, the UK economy remains reasonably, robust versus where we are. You don't see mass unemployment, you don't see mass business failure. Kind of quite looks to be quite rides these shock waves quite well. And there are definitely outliers that don't, and of course there are. But in the main, you think about the things that certainly UK SMEs have faced in the last few years, then it's been a tough gig.
And yeah, I mean, the fact that people were still setting up businesses during COVID, and I remember talking to people at the time, especially with startups, and it's like, you're starting in this, like, it can only get easier, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly kind of world. But yes, I think I think we did okay. I think we did the right thing. Certainly don't sort of look back and think we could have done things fundamentally different. I think I think we made some good calls.
Just one last bit on this. For yourself, do you prefer to work from home, or do you keep it hybrid, or do you, or do you want to be in every day?
No, I guess I'm a bit hybrid, me. So I get bored with days at home because I get distracted. So I'm an early riser. I'm an early starter, and as my team will tell you that I have to hold all my emails back because by 6 a.m. I'd flood their inbox, which is feedback they all give me. Can you stop sending stuff? So I'm an early starter. I'm an early morning. I'll do the morning run, and I don't really do much. I'm not an evening working person, so I get a bit bored. So I'm quite. If I 2 or 3 days at home would be too much for me, but then 2 or 3 days in the office is again probably too much also. And I like seeing clients. So I've had a run recently over winter for lots of reasons where I seem to have been sat more in offices and more at the home sort of office and which is the dining table. So I'll go out and see some clients and go do so. So I'm probably epitomise a hybrid, albeit I'm not in any great formula. But yeah, I like variety because you got to deal with people, haven't you? And I like that. This morning in the office this morning for a few hours, back home now because this type of thing suits for me a home environment. So I wouldn't fancy trying to do this in the office because there are too many distractions.
Yeah.
To not get so much done in the office because I tend to view that time as chance to just catch up and talk to people and that type of thing. So I'm not my most productive. So depends what I've got on. If I've got some detailed task around budgets or something, I'll do that at home. But yeah, if it's a reasonably light kind of week, then I try and get around a bit of the office. I need to do more of it, to be fair. It's too easy to get pigeonholed into kind of one office or that. I need to do a bit more travelling. But yeah.
You need to make it into a system, don't you? Of like every X weeks,
Yeah,
otherwise you're just kind of, oh, I really should do this, and
yeah. I think you slip into the. It was an article I was reading in the Times the other Sunday, which was the guy who set up HomeServe, the business that does your insurance for your boiler and all that rest of it. And he writes a piece every Sunday morning, and he'd written about 3 or 4 weeks ago. He'd written one about how you set off with all good intentions to go to work, but actually when you get there, you spend half your time doing menial tasks instead of productive things that you should be doing as a leader in a business and the rest of it. And I sent it around my team because it was just like, this is us. With all these great ideas, but then we get into the thing, we're just fine. And it's just this it epitomised what we were. Great 5-minute read, but you just think that's clearly lots of people, managers and stuff running businesses that slip into that same habit, and every now and again you just need a refresh. A good article, actually.
There was a good thing. I was talking to you about Lee's business podcast earlier, but there was a good thing on that recently where I can't remember who the guest was, but they were saying take like an hour or whatever in the morning of every day to do the forward thing, the planning stuff, the strategic stuff that you're supposed to be doing, because the rest of the day, whenever anyone's in, you're just going to be firefighting and maintaining stuff. You won't be doing any planning or strategy or anything.
No, no, and it's true that exactly true. Yeah, exactly that. And this article was the same. Just find the time because you just won't get there when
Yeah,
you
if you
get
don't make
to
the
it.
time, you won't get it. Yeah.
No, no, exactly, exactly.
So we touched on Brexit. I'll do
Yeah,
Brexit. I don't think we'll have to spend too long on this, but maybe,
no,
depending on what's happened with clients. Any change? Have you noticed any change to your
not
work from
really.
Brexit?
Not
No.
no, not really. I mean, we only operate in the UK.
Mm,
We don't really get involved in clients who export stuff, so we're not really got caught in that. So
mm,
there's the odd one that's had some challenges where it's particularly lost its market overnight or a segment of its turnover and stuff. But
mm,
it's affected some clients, but not many.
mhm,
And us as a business, not at all. I mean, it's just not done anything for us one way or either way, good or bad, really. So not a major impact. I mean, you can see the impact across other sectors, but we're not really being caught up in that. Most of our clients are UK based, kind of UK sales,
mm,
that type of thing. Really, we're not really doing much in cross border and that. So no, minimal impact.
mm. Yeah.
Seems a
I
bit like
mean,
it, but minimal impact.
it's the most common answer I've
Yeah,
really noticed. um,
yeah. Everyone else is no.
let's do climate change next, and then we'll do social media because I think we'll probably spend a bit more time on social media.
Yeah.
So I asked this for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons being that Leeds has declared a climate emergency. So, are there any ways that you can do anything to mitigate effects, adapt to effects, or promote awareness around climate change? Is it something that sort of comes up in your work or affects your work that you can see?
Yeah, so we've got our own ESG policy in place, ESG committee internally. And we do our own. We test our own carbon footprint every year and make sure that we are effectively carbon neutral. And we do that through effectively funding or a donation type thing, which has the effect, but feels like a bit of a get out to me.
Yeah,
Um,
offsetting sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it, and it's better than doing nothing, but it's probably not got its full value. What we should do, we've got an electric vehicle scheme for colleagues at work, so
Mm,
we've done a bit on that. We do quite a bit of local charity. We do a hell of a lot of charity work. We have either a national or regional charity. We do match funding. We do a lot of local stuff that the team get involved in. We
mhm.
sponsor God knows how many kids football teams around the region, that type. So
Yeah.
we're quite active in terms of that sort of side of things. And we've done days out where we've gone and done. Everybody got a environmental day where everybody's gone out and had a day either helping out at a local project or that type of thing. So we do a bit in that sense. So I'm quite pleased with how we're moving forward on the sort of on the team front. I guess you
Mhm.
can always do more. What we've not done yet is much on the client front, and that's probably the one that's a tougher nut to crack for us. So um, we could do there's certain things we could do as a lender where you could do more energy. So like a lot of our book is property based, so we
Mm,
could tie in our price into the energy efficiency or energy performance certificates of our clients' premises and that type of thing, or only fund sectors that are carbon neutral or green energy. And so there's a lot of things we could do in that sense, which
mm.
we've not got to yet. It's quite difficult because we're
Well, that's
not.
just restricting your customer base, though, isn't
It
it?
is,
Really, it's more you want to be an educator and a leader. You want to be supporting businesses to move to that green thing. And
yeah,
finance is like that's a huge area. Obviously you don't think of it because it's just cash and money, but finance is so vital to the amount of
yeah,
carbon that we're producing and how it's
yeah.
spent. So,
And it's a difficult thing about well, what I tussle a bit with this one. What are we? We're lenders. We're not advisors, and we're not business owners. We
do you borrow money from the market? Do you have a sort or is
yes.
everything property based?
No, we've two or three. We've two or three different. So all our clients are generally all property based, but we borrow money from shareholders and
Mm-hmm.
effectively, some of the London markets and some private funders. So we're borrowing theirs and then deploying it and making a turn in the middle. So it's difficult to start imposing things on clients, I think, because one, like I say, we'd naturally slow down
Mm.
um, our own pipeline and our own customers. Not really what we're there for. We're not.
Yeah,
Um,
and you're adding like you're adding a layer of admin and literally
Yeah,
red tape that you don't need to, and it's not
yeah.
necessarily going to return anything to the bottom line
No, I mean, I see
or
it more.
reduce your carbon.
Yeah, I see it more on what we can do as a team, across the sort of ESG piece. I mean, we're a good tax contributor. We employ 75 people. We pay all our bills on time. We don't delay paying small suppliers. We do all that right. We do
Mm,
all that properly. We pay corporation tax, PAYE income tax. So we do all that sort of side of things fine. We do a lot. We're quite heavily into more around, I guess, what we can do for the team and the wider community. So we're involved in quite a lot of mental health stuff. We've just had a seminar in Leeds a few weeks ago for where we brought some clients in to talk about a partnership we've set up, mental health partnership, where the guy was involved in local football clubs across the UK, local FAs, about providing mental health services for sporting clubs where actually they've got children or adults who need some, clearly got some issues or need some support and encouragement.
mhm,
So we've done that as a sort of mental health partnership. So we tend to do more on that side and less on the kind of how can we help the client base, because we're not really,
mm,
we're not investors, we're not buying shares in businesses. It's not
mm,
really, it's difficult to impose your own values and credentials when a client's borrowing a couple of £100,000 off you to do something with it, to suddenly go,
mm.
well, actually, that's we want to look at what your green credentials are is awkward for
Yeah,
us.
yeah, yeah.
We're more, so I'd rather look more internal and then go, right, how can we support that going forward around around what we can do with, like, we know all our suppliers, it's all sustainable in terms of waste and
Mm,
electricity and all. So we've done it more that way
yeah,
rather than going at talking to our client base, because it just doesn't feels a bit inappropriate, if I'm honest, and extremely difficult to kind of
yeah.
try and manage. But it's key for us, and it's key throughout the finance chain. So we borrow money from some of the banks, and it's high on their agenda. What are our
Mm,
own ESG credentials? What do we do? What's our social responsibility, etc., etc. So it's
mm,
definitely key on the agenda, and rightly so as well. I've young kids. It's important. It's important stuff, and we give it a lot of effort. And the team love it. It's good for us. We've got a committee set up, and like I said, we do a hell of a lot of charity work. And
mm,
one guy was running Manchester Marathon literally last weekend. There's a Three Peaks walk in September. There's all sorts going on, literally all
mm.
sorts. So it's positive in that sense.
Yeah, yeah. Good.
They did
Um,
Little in the other week. So the Leeds team were down at the canal, down on South Bank, picking up a lot of rubbish. So we've done, that's the kind of thing we would do. We'd do it do that, a lot of that stuff.
mm. Is that led by is that all decided together, or do people just
Yeah,
bring ideas to that? Or, yeah,
people
it's
bring
one of
ideas.
those where it's like here are some things, or do we want to support this again, or people are
Yeah,
just like, can we support this? And
yeah. There'll be National Something Day set up, so we'll get involved in
yeah,
that. So, but yeah, I think once we've got it going, and which we did, it goes on its own.
yeah,
The business supports by, yeah, of course you can have we'll give everyone a day off of doing the charity giving back day, or, we're going to
mm,
go pick litter up for a couple of hours around town. Is that fine? Of course it is. So it's that, I guess, culturally people know that they can bring these things forward, and will support and embrace wherever we possibly can, providing it's, sensible and not daft.
yeah, cool. So the last of these things affecting you questions affecting your
Hmm.
work. So social media. Is it
Yeah.
something that you have to do much? How much do you have to do it? And do you think it's worth the time that you spend on it, if you do spend any time on it?
So we're on. I think we're on most channels. So LinkedIn's probably one more prolific for us, because a lot of ours is business to business selling
Mm,
effectively. We have I've got a dedicated marketing team all in Leeds, and
mm,
of sort of five of them, soon to be six, and we've got a local PR agency also in town, who do all the sort of social media. So they work together. So yeah, we would be on there certainly certainly weekly. Used to be daily, used to be 2 or 3 times a day, but then
mm,
they keep changing the algorithm on you, so you have to move your way around. But yeah,
mm,
LinkedIn's key. But we're on LinkedIn, X or
mm,
Twitter, whatever it's called. we don't do much on Facebook. It's not relevant for us.
Mm.
We're on Instagram
Yeah.
with two sort of profiles. We have our own internal HR profile, which is called Evo, which is Evolve Your Career. So that's our own. So that's a private group of colleague stuff, effectively. And then we've got the wider reward one, which is doing client testimonials and
Mm.
clients we've helped, which is a bit of marketing for them, to be fair. Some of
Mm.
it's named where we'll push their business at the same time. So we've got a voice and a footprint. Do we get a big take up? We do okay, to be fair. We do
Mm.
okay we probably punch above our weight for the size of business we are in. What's a massive market.
Mm.
It's brand awareness for us and awareness of what we do and communication and that type of thing, really, more than anything. We've toyed with TikTok, but there don't seem to be much appetite for the team to start dancing around the office. But we're working on them. But that's but we're certainly more LinkedIn, Instagram, that type of thing. But we see it as key to what we're
Mm.
doing. But it's difficult because it's so noisy. There's so much false information out there.
Mm.
It's a field, isn't it? I mean, just as a user myself, and I've got a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old, and you just some of the stuff that comes through is just a bit
Mm.
mind-boggling, really.
Mm. Yeah, it's amazing that we allow children access
Yeah.
to the internet, really.
Yeah, it is. Oh, it is without a doubt where you can go, and I think it's just some of the stuff that I kind of should know this already, but it still amazes me when you just look at something, you search something on Google or something, and then the following day that subject's on every stream you've got, and I just think, what the hell is going on here in terms of data sharing? And I mean, I'm not a techie, but
I mean,
just
even if you think of it from the news perspective, like, I remember in the 90s, I remember there being this whole huge fuss about this video called, what was it, Faces of Death, it had video, like footage of executions and stuff that had gone onto video. And like, if you saw something, like the news didn't really show you snuff. And now it's like
oh yeah,
everywhere, all the
yeah,
time. Here's all these people dying that we will
yeah,
just show you.
yeah.
Like,
It's mad.
and people will literally just show you of like, here's something that's very traumatic that I will just put in your head.
Yeah, it's very odd. I mean, we use it a bit. We used to use WhatsApp as the comms internally, but we just shut that down a couple of weeks ago just because we need to move to something that's a bit more probably secure and robust. So we pulled all that inside a bit. But
Yeah.
I think it's how do you? I'm all for embracing technology and having a go at this type of thing, but you've got to do it in a sort of safe and responsible environment, really. But yeah, so we would use it. We'd use it quite heavily. It's a key part of our marketing and kind of comms piece. But it's purely just to drop. We don't transact any business on it. Probably don't pick up, or I'm not aware that we pick up any business from it. But brand awareness, that type of thing, it looks good. But with no influencers.
Yeah.
The one we use internal is part of the Microsoft suite. It's called Viva Engage. So we use that as the internal comms piece, and that they encourage you. The guys that we use encourage us to do videos. So I did my first one a couple of weeks ago, 20-second soundbite. I thought I'll lead. No one else has done one yet. I'll have a go. Kind of did it. Thought, I mean, really feels very odd. I mean, it's fine here talking to someone, but literally talking to yourself,
Yeah.
and then sent it out to 75 people.
Yeah.
Got no response at
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
for ages, and you just think. Then one of them takes the Mickey out of you with, your next we'll be sending you free products as you're the influencer. So suddenly it gets going a bit, but very odd, very odd.
Well, it's that thing, it takes that first person, doesn't it? Like someone's got to be the
Yeah.
first commenter, and
Yeah.
so
I need to do another one. Really.
yeah. Well, you'll start to get addicted probably. As you do. But the other thing is, if you don't get the attention, you start to want to get, the urge is there to get provocative. And
Yeah.
you're like, right, well, I'm going to be angry or controversial or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Oh, that's definitely me because I'm dead open at work. Me, so that's my danger. I'm likely to say something, record it, send it, and then kind of bring an onslaught on.
Yeah, this is why we should have social media managers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want, again, a final sort of finish on this point. In terms of, I mean, I'm assuming LinkedIn, so I'm going to say LinkedIn, but do you do much in terms of like networking for that? Or do you do much like in terms of business development or meeting new clients? Is that useful for you? Have you managed to kind of leverage it?
Yeah, LinkedIn we use. we use a bit for recruitment.
Mm.
We use LinkedIn a bit for pushing product messages out and market messages and that type of thing. I'm building the network of who's
But do
joined.
you use it? Do you
Me
use it?
personally, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and that's
Probably.
have you got any clients out of it yet?
I've not personally. I suspect the new business
Mm.
guys will have certainly picked up we've picked up new introducers from it, definitely.
Mm.
But we won't, because we don't go direct to the SME, we won't have picked that up. But yeah, we'll definitely pick up new introducers from it. So people setting up new brokerage business, new introducer businesses, effectively, or people moving roles, then we'll pick it up off the back of that. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I tend to try. I guess I'm a bit stop start with it. This is one of the problems. I think you have to probably be a
Mm.
bit more consistent. So I'll forget
Mm.
about it for a few weeks, and then I'll think, oh, I'll send that and I'll share this. But yeah, I try. I try to be that provocative kind of. Oh, that's interesting. That'll wind a few people up. I'll send that. See what kind of comes back. Really. Um,
I'll just leave this here.
yeah, yeah. I think the problem is there's a lot of waste. That's the problem with with
Yeah.
LinkedIn. There's a lot of you have to be really careful how you manage your network to make sure that you've got the right people in there and you get a lot of followers and stuff. But I think in the main, it's a good thing. I think just I've not used any. We've had a go at some of their paid stuff with
Mm.
mixed results.
Mm. I think
Some of the
there's two
stuff.
kind of sides to it. I think for me with social media, there's the feeding the algorithm, putting the content outside, which is very much for your marketing strategy
Yeah,
people, but there is the real business development side, which is the actual genuine sort of social, like you see a thing, you comment on it, and they potentially comment back, or and those kind of boosts. It's the actual it's the engagement that you perform. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean by that? So when you're actually engaging with other posts and other people's work and vice versa, that activity, and I think that's more valuable. That's the more natural
yeah,
connection making sort of work. Yeah.
yeah. No, exactly.
I'm going to do the UBI question first because I think we'll spend less time on it. And I think you might have a bit more to say on the change question, maybe. But yeah, so universal basic income, I assume you're familiar with this.
Yeah.
How do you think it might affect your work? I guess for you, not majorly. And I guess for you, I mean, you're probably in a position where you work in the hours that you want to, you're not doing excessive hours or working too much kind of thing.
No.
Yeah. Would it make much of a difference for you?
No, I mean, personally, no. I think work-wise, probably not. I guess I'm not. I mean, I understand they've actually stopped the pilot in Wales, haven't they? Around Christmas time, I think they've stopped that because they said it was costing too much. So I guess there's a long way to go to work out what its values are
Mm,
and how it runs. And I guess I'm not. I guess that's the unknown for me about right. Well, you supplement people's income. Do they then work less? How does all that sort of knit together? So I think that would be the natural thing where we would have an impact would be where people would come along and go, well, I don't want to do full time anymore. I want to do part time
mm,
because my income has been supplemented by UBI, but feels a long way off
mm,
off that. With 70 odd people, so we're a reasonable sized business, but we're not a Tesco with 100,000 plus. So I think if you're in that business, there's potentially a massive impact, and equally, we're probably we bring whilst we bring a few sort of new to work people in, we don't have a grad program, so we've got a
mm.
generally reasonably experienced workforce as well. We pay well. I think we pay well. Half the team listening to this and go, "No, you don't." But I think we pay okay. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting social experiment to see how it plays out. I
Mm.
was curious when the Welsh government stopped it because is the other one still running up in the northeast? Was it somewhere?
I don't know. I'll have to check. Yeah, there was one in Jarrow.
Yeah,
I think the other one was There were two in England. I think there was one in Wales.
yeah,
I need to look at it again. I spoke to someone from the UBI lab in Leeds. Really interesting guy. And I've got a sort of special recording with him. I did it at the Virgin Money upstairs, and the room booking
yeah.
kind of went wrong, and it was all too loud, and you can't really hear it. But that was a really interesting chat.
I can imagine. I'd love
Um,
to see the research. I'd love to see the output data that's come. What have they learnt?
I
That
mean,
would be fascinating.
I've seen largely just positive things, but that's the
Yeah,
kind of stuff that the algorithm's going to serve me. So
yeah.
but yeah, I do think it's interesting, and the main reason, like, I'm all for it, but I do think I have got to the point where I've got, more interesting kind of criticisms now. Before it was sort of, now it's questions of motivation and sort of skills as well. Like, if you move to, I'm all for people working less, producing less carbon, having less time spent on work and all of this kind
Yeah,
of stuff.
absolutely.
But then what does that mean for skills? Like, how
Yeah.
good will you be at a thing? Or is everything going to be placed by a robot anyway? But like, having skills and being good at something is important to us as creatures. And,
Yeah.
like, whether that's being good with your hands or whatever, it's important to be skilled at something, I think.
Yeah. Well, I guess that drives motivation and getting out of bed in the morning and going to do something and feeling like you've a sense of achievement. And
Mm,
there's loads of things like that, which I think are things that you have to look at,
mm,
before you get into the numbers behind it, but fulfillment and all the kind of values that human beings have around I've done a good job today and pride and
mm,
all that's in the mix.
mm,
But yeah, I think you're right. The fundamental, the basics of I'd like to work less and spend more time with my kids and do all the rest of it and more on social enterprise, etc. So absolutely. I mean, that's
mm,
there's no downside at all on that side of it. But you're right. There is some elements of how do you deal with some of those basic human instincts. As I said, there's not a big enough control study, is there? That's the key. I've not
yeah.
looked at the US where this thing started. I'm not, but I understand where they're trying to get to it. I just think that I'll be like I said, I'd be curious to the guy you spoke to at UBI Lab. I'd love to see the data.
Mm, mm. So I'm conscious of time, so I'm gonna. I
Yeah.
won't take that any further at this point. So the final question is the change question. If you could change any three things about your work, what would you change? Would you change anything?
I don't know. To be fair, I think there's a bit of. I'm not sure. I'd probably change that. I think we
More
won't change it.
clients, bigger
Yeah, I mean,
lending.
there's always a bit of that in there. And
Yeah.
if my shareholders listen to this, they'll say, "Come on, Nick, surely it's more business."
Huge profit.
Exactly.
Everything. To be the number one in the country at
Yeah.
giving
Didn't have all
money to
that
businesses.
running around the room. I think internally we probably need to be more technologically advanced.
Mm,
So I think I'd like to, we need to move that a bit quicker. I think we're good with customers, so I don't want to see much in that side. We need to get better at training. That'd be one thing I'd change our
mm,
emphasis on. So whilst we do a lot of good stuff from a people perspective uh, with some of the social stuff that we do and the environmental stuff we do, I just think some of our sort of training stuff needs to just up its game a bit. And I'm really keen. One thing that bothers me, and I said this to the team in Leeds on Tuesday because we had a presentation on 3-year plan. I'm not comfortable yet. I'm still offering people who join as a job, not a career, and I'm not comfortable with that. I want to offer people who join as a career pathway to go and do other things over a sustained period of time, with us or without us. Don't get me wrong. I'm not in job
Do
for
you have
life.
a Do you have a learning and development policy?
We do.
Yeah,
And we've just recruited a HR business partner last year,
yeah,
and we're beefing that up. So we're at the start of that, and I guess it's because we've come from such a small base,
yeah,
20, 30 people. We've doubled the headcount of the business in the last 18 months, 2 years. So some of that stuff's not kept pace, but that's the bit where I just want to see. I just want us to do more in that field, and it's definitely on our agenda this year. So if I could
yeah,
change that, I'd change that. That would be my number one priority. Much more around I'm here, I've got a career, I can see what I'm doing, or on that type of grad recruitmenty type thing, which
mm,
which is never not for a business our size is not normal. Most businesses in that world, it's much bigger stuff, but that's probably the number one thing I'd change. And then number two, just satisfy shareholders, more customers, more profit, all that jazz, which I don't really mean, but no.
um, is there a third one then, or just those two?
Um, no, and I think just the embracing technology piece.
Mm,
just the embracing tech bit of it, we're a bit behind in that. So that's also something we're probably lacking at. And I don't want to get into our core values around knowing our customers and all the rest of it. So I don't mean in terms of moving away from what we're really good at. I just mean more efficient, doing it a bit better, a bit
Yeah.
smarter, and just keeping pace a bit more with that wider sort of banking. So just daft stuff like we could do with an app that tells clients what the balance is and that type of thing. So nothing groundbreaking, just a bit of catch up.
Yeah. Cool. So that's all my questions. So yeah, I've managed to bring it in just about on time so far.
Good.
So this is normally the part I throw it over to you to talk about anything that you want to talk about. You don't have to, but it's also the opportunity for you to give us any socials if you have them to hand. If not, I'll just put them in the show notes. But where can people find Reward and yourself?
Yeah, I think where can people find Reward? Generally, we are Reward Finance Group on LinkedIn and on Instagram. I'm Nick Smith on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, but I tend to keep that my own sort of personal stuff. But yeah, typically about Reward would be Reward website, and LinkedIn would be our primarily sort of two points really. And you'll find my details on the website along with all the senior team and anybody who's client facing. And you'll find me on LinkedIn. You could just search for Nick Smith Reward Finance Group.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you very much. Is there anything that you want to chat about? I mean, we've covered a lot of ground.
Brilliant. Really enjoyed it. If I'm honest, first one I've ever done. Loved it.
Yeah, it's fine, isn't it? It's not scary, and yeah,
no, it's a chat, and I've really enjoyed it. And I think you've asked some great questions and moved it along nicely. So no, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, loved it, and would recommend anybody else having a go to help you get to your 1,000 podcasts target.
Okay. Well, that's definitely staying in. Okay, thanks, Nick. Thank you again to Nick for being my guest. Thanks, as always, to all my guests, and thanks to you, Leeds, for being my subject. If you'd like to work with Nick, go to rewardfinancegroup.com. So, I'm not going to do the truncated free episodes. I want to have a consistent 2 episodes published a week, but I don't have the resources or motivation to do that much unpaid labour each week at the moment. So it's 1 episode whenever I can. If you would like the show to be a regular part of your routine, then I'm afraid you're going to have to help me get to that level, because I'm struggling here with a project that I feel I have already failed at, that looks like a mountain of work to be done for no one and for no reason. I love doing the interviews for Working Hours. Strangely enough, I also feel really proud every time I publish an episode, even though it's also a massive anticlimax each time that I do that. Please offer me any support you can to cheer me on a bit. I do really appreciate the people who have engaged recently. It all does really help. So, as I said, I've decided against creating artificial scarcity of the podcast and instead decided to create more democratic opportunities for loiners. So, I want to offer loiners more options for how you want to represent and present yourself on this podcast, not less options. Also, if you've an episode that's already published that you would like me to change, then you can also give me a shout to discuss that. Working Hours was not about being a soapbox for me. That's not what I wanted to do at all, and that's not what this is. This project speaks for itself through the framing of the opening, through the questions I've chosen, and through the discussions with my guests. I'm just a compere. Leeds is the star, and I shouldn't be trying to upstage the star of the project. You are the talent leads, and you should be treated as such, even if the budget of this show is threepence halfpenny. If you'd like to speak to me about one of my guests, or about being a guest, or about anything at all Working Hours related, sponsorships, ad reads, local notices, whatever, then you can email Working Hours at workinghourspod@western-studios.com. If you're too Yorkshire to make a donation to some Ponzi internet project and you need to see something tangible for your money, then don't forget that you can actually do that and support Working Hours. How? By buying podcast services from me, Western Studios Leeds. My work is cheaper than everyone else's in the city, and I can guarantee that because I actually have to pay people in order to be allowed to work for free. That's how well my life has gone. Anyway, Email makemypodcast@western-studios.com if you need some mug to exploit. Okay, that's me. Work for peace and plan with kindness. Cheers, ears. Take care out there and be kind to each other, Leeds. Working Hours is produced, recorded, edited and published by Simon Treen for Western Studios, Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain and was taken from museopen.org. Go to western-studios.com and use the contact page on the site to drop me a message about either Working Hours or about your own Leeds podcast project. Keep up to date with Working Hours and find out about the other great Leeds podcasts that Western Studios is involved with by following Western Studios Leeds on Facebook at facebook.com/western_studios_Leeds and on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/Western-Studios. Western Studios Leeds is available to loaners to help them realise their own podcast projects for only £30 for an hour of audio podcast work or £40 for an hour of video podcast work. Email makemypodcast@western-studios.com with details of your project and what support you want to get your Leeds podcast made. Whatever your podcast question or need, get in touch with Western Studios Leeds.